Light is not the surface. For all the concavers out there,
So light's Euclidean.
light behaves in ways that can be described using straight line maths.
But how do you know that it's Euclidean though?
Well, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you think the definition of Euclidean is?
Straight.
Right. So can you see we both said straight in a sentence?
Right, but how can we verify that light
Travels in straight lines.
Yeah, that it follows a parallel postulate for infinite, from the sun to here and etc.
Well, we can measure the behavior of light in a vacuum, and if the proposition that they supply you is that the journey from here, the transit from in space is near vacuumous, they're making a correlation, aren't they? That's as simple as that, really.
All right.
What about when Venus eclipses the sun? Then it's not traveling through a vacuous scenario, right? It's got to travel around Venus, which there's got to be like something going on there, right?
There probably is some effects of light on the very peripheral of Venus traveling through its atmosphere. That's how they. Isn't that the way in which they discuss the idea of evaluating atmospheres in distant planets around distant stars by looking at the spectroscopy of the light traveling through the fringe?
But does it come in parallel to Earth on that day?
At the same time, in the same system. Is there any reason for that? Like, I'm struggling to see why you can't have both of them coexist simultaneously in the same system. I can give you a justification. I can show you an example, practical. But yeah, go ahead.
You and I are making these things compatible in two different ways. You're saying that he knows what you're going to choose, but you still chose it. Right?
Yes.
I'm saying you didn't actually have an option to do anything else.
No, that's not true. You have. What's the justification for not having an option?
That God knows which one you're going to choose.
Yeah, and why would that violate your option of choosing?
Because you didn't actually have an option. If that decision is already written in the future.
No, I didn't. No. Why not? Just because he has foreknowledge, all of a sudden you have no free will. It just completely disintegrates your free will. How does that make any sense?
You don't have free will. No.
Okay, let me explain it like this. This is like Arthur Schopenhauer famously said, man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills.
So okay. I'll give you a real world example of predeterminism, right? For example, we have free will within certain parameters that God has set forth, right? There's certain boundaries in reality, physical and metaphysical boundaries. Right? We have 5 senses that will only get us so far. We also have the icy boundary that exists at the extremities of the earth. So there's physical boundaries that he won't allow us to go beyond those boundaries. There's a firmament above our heads. We can't break through the firmament. So right there, we don't have the free will to go beyond those boundaries, right? But we still have free will, but it's limited, right? So with that stance, you have to be reasonable with me. So, for example, if we're all
nobody pretends that free will includes being able to break the laws of physics, though.
I'm just giving you a practical example how you can have free will and still be bound against certain, things like freedom to roam the cosmos. With that being said, hold on. So we're all considered sheep in the scriptures, right? And we have the lost sheep of Israel that have been scattered abroad. Now, normally we would be penned up in a pen, right? Now the sheep have the free will to frolic and jump around and mate and do whatever they want, but they have the borders, right? Now the creator, the shepherd, he has a staff. And with that staff, he can kind of push us around and kind of get us to go down a certain path. So he can corral us to another pen and move us from one pen to the other. We still have free will, but he still has the determinism to control the sheep and the flock to push him towards a certain area, yet still maintaining free will.
Yeah, but
That's
he doesn't
compatible.
know
That
which
doesn't
way
make
to choose.
sense.
Yeah,
It does
totally
actually in all of, because you're going from an is to a ought. So just the fact that you can rethink an intended course of action, it proves free will.
What?
No. So
Yeah, the fact that you
the
can
shepherd,
take a course of action and rethink what would have happened in another aspect proves free will.
Why doesn't that prove absolutely not the existence of free will? Why doesn't it prove that you are meant to rethink that?
Because that what I'm describing now would be like soft determinism. You don't have to 100% go one way or the other. It's not a dichotomous situation that it's either free will or no free will, and you're presenting it as if it is. So you're in
No,
a false dilemma.
I think that God just said you have to do this, and when you do this, you have to think this. That's perfectly compatible with like the idea of determinism said by God, because He knows everything and is all and is also
No, because then what you're saying is nobody has to choose God, right?
yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
that's not the case.
No, I don't think you can choose God. I think God has a limit.
No, it is. It is specifically something that is chosen, because when you don't choose God, you lack knowledge and wisdom, and you end up in a predicament like you are in
But
here at this
why do you
point.
think that all truth and intelligibility are housed and upkept in the disembodied mind of a greater God? Then you have to affirm that premise. Why do you think that I cannot hold knowledge without God? I clearly can do a lot of things without God. Like, for example, I can understand you, I can reason without God, and you're claiming that through God you can only reason. But
Oh yeah, because I'm saying you're
talking to me
borrowing from
shows
my world. You're borrowing from
talking to
my
me.
worldview at this
I'm not
point.
borrowing.
So yeah,
I completely reject God, and then yet I can still reason.
that's fine. Yeah, you reject it, but you're lying to yourself. Man can also lie to
This
himself.
is grotesque now. You're just accusing me of like being diluted.
Well, no, I'm just saying to you, when you ask me for a justification of what makes knowledge possible, and then I answer God, and then I ask you the same question, what's the justification for making knowledge possible? And you say, because I can reason with you, you've just used a
No, I'm
circular
not saying that.
argument.
I'm just saying I can reason without God, and I don't know why I can reason. Let's say I don't know why, right? But in
Well,
your
that's the
world,
difference
the
between
only
me and
way you
you.
can reason is through God. So in my world, I don't
No,
know
no,
why,
no,
but I
no,
can
no, no, no,
reason.
no,
In
no.
your world, God is
That's,
the
that's
only
not what
source
I'm
of
saying. That's not
the
what I'm
ability
saying.
to reason. What are you
No,
saying?
that I'm saying that reason is only possible through God. Now you can deny God and still reason, but you're not being honest with
Can you
yourself.
prove
You're
that?
just
Can you prove
lying.
that reason is only possible through God?
Well, no. It's what I'm saying is because of the lack of evidence to the
Presupposition.
contrary. Just like you said, I don't know
We,
why it is
exactly.
possible. So yeah,
we never move like this through the entire world
we
of
do
like
actually in
rationale,
everything that we do.
because
Do
like
you
we lack
agree right
evidence, then we
now?
assume like
No, you do. You do in all of it. Right now, you agree that heat boils water as far as we know right now because there's no evidence to the contrary, but it is possible in the future something could change.
I mean, right now I agree that there's a phenomena that's related to energy in terms of like transfer of energy when it comes to like achieving certain temperatures of matter. Sure. So
Yeah, because there's no evidence to the contrary so far, right?
I don't understand what you mean by this.
Well, I mean, is there another way to make water boil? I mean, we could go through all the
Yeah.
ways and then we could come to a
Yes.
conclusion saying, well, there is many other ways, but so far the reason we believe these ways to be the only ways is because we have not seen evidence to the contrary. But we
have
leave it
multiple ways to
open
make
for the
water.
future. Can you let me finish? But we leave it open for the future that there is another possibility. It's the same thing I'm doing.
Well, no, you're not doing that. You're saying is that you're making a very ultimate statement, as if it is impossible to reason without God. Therefore, the only way you can reason is through God. And if you think that that's not the case, then you're just diluted. That's what you're saying.
That's not what I'm saying at all. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm
That's
saying that
exactly
there
what you're
is no
saying.
evidence
That's
to
You're
the
starting out
contrary
in
so far.
pretend land, Tor. I mean, you're in pretend land because there's no evidence for God anyway.
Well, no, I know
Well,
that
the
you
problem with
can
the
assume
presupposition,
that. You can assume that, but if you start, right? And I know sometimes people won't like to start with this, but just say you have two options. Either we live in the God world or the not God world, right? So what we do is we try to build coherent frameworks off of that dichotomy, right? So God world, what would be the evidence for the God world? Then you would have to step into the creationist worldview, right? And you see, okay, well, they say the, complexity, the creation around us, we have all
But
these
I reject
transcendentals
that
like
dichotomy.
knowledge. And,
Why is it the God world and non-God world? Why is it not the God world, the non-God world, or the multiple gods world?
Yeah.
that would be the God world. Multiple gods world would just be the God world.
No, they're all equally powerful.
Okay, that doesn't matter. That's still the God world.
Oh, okay. So it's just a theist world. It's either a theist world or a non-theist world.
Correct. Yes, exactly. Yes, that's all
Okay,
I'm saying. So now we can critique the two positions based on the
again,
transcendental. So the justification for the transcendentals, like knowledge, was justified in both of those worldviews coherently.
Or I can just be agnostic and say that God does not make any sense. It's not coherent.
That's fine. That's
God
an
in general
incredulous argument.
is a nonsensical world. So therefore, I cannot even perceive what you mean by
you can make that argument.
Fine.
That's fine. That's called an incredulous argument.
That means you lost.
Don't know, you don't understand. Therefore, I don't believe
win or
it.
lose with
So
you
if I
guys.
don't
It's not
know or
actually
understand, so if I don't know or understand you, should I then just assume you don't exist?
No, I'm saying is that Lion, this is really showing as a Christian that everything is win or lose scenario. But
no, it's
not.
It's not that. But if you're going to engage in a theological discussion regarding logic and reasoning, you just bailed out, dude. You just admitted.
No, I have not. If I'm given time to lay out my position, you understand what I mean. But you consistently don't give me time.
No, but you already.
Do I need to ping Omni again so we can have a conversation in the mod room about this?
Go ahead.
This is so obnoxious.
Get back to the point.
But you understand that you appeal to incredulity, right?
If you're giving me a dichotomy in one situation where you're talking about a being outside of this universe that I can never perceive, that will be a false dichotomy from me, right? You understand this, right? And you have to justify why should I accept that dichotomy in the first place.
Okay, so you don't accept the laws of logic.
What? What do you mean?
So then you don't accept the laws of logic.
I don't think you understood what I said.
Okay, where are they in the universe then? Point to them for me.
The laws of logic are something that we instantiate in our minds. They're not like written somewhere in the universe or in the center in the universe.
Yeah, that's what God is. Dude.
No, God is.
Yeah, the universe acts in a logical way from any point of the universe.
Can you prove that?
Yeah,
what do you mean by that?
We assume it to be logical without a reason for the laws of logic.
How do you know that? First of all, what does it even mean?
God is similar to the laws of logic in the fact that it is a conceptual item held in the mind.
Yeah, when you ask for proof, right? We're not dealing with 100% proof here. There are axioms. The laws of logic are axiomatic, unless you can provide the contrary, right? That you've somehow violated them. They stand true. They don't need proof. You understand? You know how axioms and principles work?
There's no evidence to the contrary of the law of logic.
Yeah, there's no evidence to the contrary. That is the evidence that they hold.
The laws of logic are tools that we manifest because our brains are geared towards like that specific pattern of thinking. Right?
So we can manifest things.
I mean, the laws of logic being one, yeah.
Yeah, it's called a discovery, not a manifestation.
But yeah, for
discover and manifest them, like figuratively speaking, right?
I mean, if you want to get figurative, but we're having a very in-depth conversation, so please choose your vocabulary wisely.
Yeah, to engage in this discussion, you have to really know your logic and your reasoning. And when you ask for proof, it's not proof. You got to ask for evidence for our justification, right? And the evidence that we use is based off of inductive and deductive reasoning. And following a propositional like logic formula, you have to really know that you're shit, dude. Like, and I'm not saying I'm a doctor in philosophy. I'm not saying I'm a doctor in philosophy. Right. But when you start off the conversation saying, "Well, it doesn't make any sense to me," and this and that. You're already losing the conversation. Logically, you're
No,
losing because you're appealing to incredulity.
That's not incredulity. Being presented a dichotomy in which one of the components of the dichotomy, which the whole dichotomy hinges upon, is incoherent in my worldview, does not help further the conversation. I would expect my partner in the conversation to be able to convince me that this is not an incoherent thing, and therefore the dichotomy is valid.
Okay, well then we'll use a different dichotomy. Think of either the laws of logic exist or they don't, right? We'll just use that dichotomy instead, right? So we have two worldviews. One, the laws of logic don't exist. Two, the laws of logic do exist, right? Which one's more logically coherent?
What does it mean for the laws of logic to exist?
They exist.
They're material. They're like they're written
they're
somewhere.
immaterial. No, they're immaterial. You don't know what we live in the world that the laws of logic exist, right? And you couldn't even imagine a world that the laws of logic don't exist, correct? That's the point of the question.
So I assume you're
you would
talking
have
about
to use logic to come to that conclusion, right? And you can't.
I assume you're talking about the classical laws of logic, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So
the classical laws of logic are the thing we derived, or as you like to say, discovered, right?
Correct.
Through some whatever process, sure. And those laws describe certain things, certain properties of abstract thought or whatever, right?
Yeah, identity, right? The laws of logic, is the reason that we can.
Sure, but they describe something that already existed, right? That's the point.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and the laws of logic are mind dependent.
Sure, I would agree.
Yeah, so then if they've already existed before any man's mind, therefore there's an ultimate mind that holds the laws of logic.
No, they're mind dependent, not mind independent. Mind dependent.
Yeah, they're mind dependent. They need a mind in order to exist. So therefore, before any mind existed, the universe operated in a logical manner, unless you're saying it didn't.
No, I disagree. I don't think the universe can operate in a logical manner.
Okay, so how do you do science? How do you do any science then? Because then you've lost uniformity of nature at this point.
We established that there's patterns to the way universe works, and we call that logic. But to call that the universe uses logic the way we humans understand it is absurd.
Well, you said logic is mind dependent, so are you attributing the universe to being a mind?
No. What I'm saying is the universe has mechanisms by which it functions. We don't know all the mechanisms. Some of the mechanisms we have uncovered, and we have given them some sort of mathematical justification or using symbols to justify these
and those are considered laws, right? And those laws are mind dependent. All laws are mind dependent.
They're laws in the sense of they describe a phenomena consistently. That's what if you mean that by law, sure.
But that requires a mind.
That's not an objective universal thing.
That requires a mind unless you have evidence to the contrary.
Yeah, you're making claims right now that go against reason. Hold on.
I'm a descriptivist.
You're claiming that the universe isn't logical. That goes against reasoning, deductive, inductive, and abductive reasoning. For you to claim that, you would have to abandon reason. You understand that, right?
I'm not claiming that, though.
You just said that.
What I'm saying
is the universe is not logical.
We humans have discovered certain mechanisms of the universe, and we have described these mechanisms with whatever formulae, right? And we use that formulae or that set of formulae as a compendium for us to describe said mechanisms, and we use them in practical manners. We apply them where we can and where it's useful. But the universe does not care how we describe its mechanisms, because it's not a sentient being. It's not a mind. It's just a function or a series of functions and some functions.
Well, you made a specific claim. You can't back it up without using sophistry, dude. Everything that exists, right, has a cause. Everything that was caused to exist has a reason You're saying that the universe is illogical or it's not logical and it's not reasonable. I wholeheartedly disagree
Yeah,
with you.
then
Go ahead.
how did we derive the
I
laws of
think I
logic
said that.
from it? You know, I mean, this is the problem
That's
you're
not what
in
he
right
said.
now is the universe itself can't account for itself.
I feel like Discord
So-
might be a point
Did the
against the
laws-
universe being
yeah.
logical and reasonable.
Okay, please hear me out.
Could I ask a question?
I agree.
If we think that the laws of physics, as we know them now, existed prior to humans, and it's just that we have discovered them and described them, wouldn't that be more or less the same thing with logic?
Yeah, it's all so every law requires a lawmaker. Yeah, and you have to assume the laws of physics work that way because you have a whole entire story about how the sun created the earth and coalesced dirt because of these laws of physics that we have, and then this giant thing hit into the earth and created the moon, and it stays right where it is because all the laws of physics are not changing.
But that's just a presupposition that you need to have a lawgiver. The laws that we have is made by humans.
It's
If
to the
describe
evidence
the
of the
universe.
It's because there is no evidence to the contrary. You don't have evidence that there has ever been a law ever without a mind.
So
You
the
don't
laws,
have
yeah, that's
No,
completely wrong.
assuming that's okay.
Yeah, because the
It's
laws
not
are,
the case.
laws of hang on, the laws of physics that we have today is our description of how the universe works. Prior to that, it was just the universe and how it works. We made up those laws to describe how the universe works.
Okay, yes, we use language, which is subjective, but do you agree no matter what language you use, those laws are objectively true?
Objectively true is a bit difficult because they could
Well,
be
then
changes
you gotta
within the
throw
law-
away.
within the
Then you
law.
gotta
Hang on.
throw away your whole model because it's all built on the fact that the laws of physics were the same from the beginning till now.
No, it's just that we haven't described them perfectly yet.
You guys
No,
are conflating
dude.
a
In
couple
order
of
to
different
have the sun create the earth and have dust coalesce together, you used all the laws of physics that we described, that we observed in the universe already. So yeah, the laws of
But
physics
those-
are
but-
objective. Our
those laws
interpretation
could-
of them are
could-
subjective.
But those laws could change slightly. So we don't have a perfect description yet.
Yes, you will never with that mentality, with that appeal to the possibility of that, then you have no reason to even believe the future is going to be similar to the past.
Yeah, based on what the past has been and tell us what it's been, it's very, very likely that the future is going to be more or less acting more or less the same way. It's
Yeah,
a
that's not.
presupposition, yes.
Yeah, it's a
just
presupposition
like
with
you-
no
no, just like you do.
justification.
But you
I feel like we're
argue at the
conflating-
same time, don't you? You have a presupposition that the God exists, and then you
It's
you
not a
sort of-
presupposition.
Yes, it is.
It is.
No,
It's
you know why it's not a
I walked
presupposition?
you through. I walked
know
you
why it's
through
not
the
a
true
presupposition?
dichotomy. I walked them through the true dichotomy line. I don't know why they're going with that. It's either the God world or not God world. Are you stating there's like some other option out there?
No, I'm not. But
Okay, therefore, that's an
No,
axiom.
The presupposition is that a God exists, and then you afterwards try to use logic and arguments to fit to your presupposition. That's all you do.
That's not correct.
No, you can
dude.
work. No, hold on. You can work deductively or inductively and come to a reasonable conclusion that creator exists. But it's not circular reasoning or presuppositional fallacy
is.
because you have external lines of
Yes, it is.
evidence. No, like the teleological argument. If you look at irreducible complexity, irreducible complexity is the best evidence that there was a divine architect, and that's an external line of evidence. It's not circular reasoning or begging the question.
You reduce
or
reason
presuppositional
it's circular.
fallacy.
the argument
It's
is
a
reducing
no,
complexity.
no,
has-
no, hold on.
has
It's a
has
rational.
been-
No, it's a no.
Has been-
Listen. It's not begging the question. Begging the question is if I
It is.
if I use the no. Listen, I'll explain it to you real quick. If the Bible says right, God created the universe, and I say, and you guys ask me, what's your evidence for God creating the universe? And I say, oh, the Bible said so. That's begging the question. If the Bible says God created the universe, and then I look at an external source, an external line of evidence like nature, and I use deductive and inductive reasoning, it's no longer begging the question or
It's called
it's known as
indirect evidence. It's called
yeah, it's called,
indirect evidence.
Problem is,
hold on, hold
going-
on, dude. I'm almost done. I know you guys are getting triggered. I'm almost done. When you use inductive and deductive reasoning from observations of nature, that's a rational inference. It's allowed in propositional logic. Go ahead.
You make the
Irreducible
question
Hold
at
on,
the
Ryan,
beginning.
is that you're
has been
presuming.
debunked. That's a very bad
Hold
argument.
on. I can put this very simply. The problem, Lion, is that you're presuming the world in which we live to be a God world, and any evidence that's presented to you from the world at all, you're going to reject as being from the not God world because you just pre-assume that such a world doesn't exist. That's what makes it circular and begging the question.
No, it's the incoherency of the not God world. So we can go through it with you. Okay, in the not God world, what makes knowledge possible?
A brain.
The same thing that would make it possible in the God world.
Okay, was
wouldn't
there any
distinguish one from the
knowledge?
other.
Oh, the difference is in the God world, what makes knowledge possible is the God.
That's your opinion.
That is the truth
Yeah,
of
that's
the God
explained.
world position. When you define the God world as God being the source for intelligibility,
That's
the
your God
intelligibility.
world.
Define
No,
your argument into
no, I'm
existence.
not
That's why it's
defining it into
circular.
existence. Dude, what do you define God as?
You're begging the question at the get is the problem.
No, dude, I'm not. If we're gonna have a reasonable discussion of what is the God, what is like the difference between the not God world and the God world, we have to come to agreement on the definition of God. So you give me a definition, I'll give you one. We'll come to a conclusion and agree on a definition.
Real quick, let me just add real quick that also, if we're going to progress this conversation, we have to know the difference between a presuppositional fallacy, speculation, begging the question, and a rational inference, right? And with syllogisms, right? With propositional logic, you're allowed a premise. You have a major premise and a minor premise. That's what's a premise, you guys? What's a premise?
When you say that, you're using
we
the
live in a
Bible
God world.
Hold on.
and you're
What's
using
a
the
premise,
Bible to say that
Left-wing?
God is real. Is that right? Is that your initial premise
No,
that
listen.
God is real because the Bible says so?
Just
No.
because you have a premise doesn't mean it's a presuppositional fallacy. There's rules for inference. That's what I'm trying to tell you guys. You guys are not listening, right? Begging the question would be circular reasoning when you're using the source itself to defend the conclusion. So you're using the premise to defend the conclusion. So if my premise was the Bible says that God created the universe, and then I say the evidence for that is the Bible, that would be begging the question. That would be circular reasoning. I'm not doing that. There's multiple lines of evidence in biology, in DNA, in the teleological argument, the cosmological argument, the irreducible complexity. There's multiple lines of evidence defending my premise externally from the Bible.
To say that God did all of that, you're begging the question.
No, it's
It's not
not.
begging
It's
the
the
question.
transcendentals. It's the transcendentals, okay? The three reasons that we believe God exists is because of the laws of logic, the uniformity of nature, and knowledge being possible. These are all indirect evidences of the God world. So if the not God world could go ahead at this point and present justification for those three things, that would be great.
I can actually do that if I may jump in. In the non-God world, we do not require God to know things. So that already directly refutes your claim that knowledge is evidence of God.
Okay, so do you know that for sure?
If I do, within the non-God world, for me to know that, I don't need God.
Okay, how do you know that then? How do you have knowledge? Like, what is making the knowledge possible, though? What is it? Is it your brain?
What is making the knowledge possible is the state of the world.
The state of the world?
Yeah.
What is that?
Let me explain.
What do you mean? Can you expand on that?
Let's say we have a star called the sun. In the non-God world, the star is not contingent on God in order for it to exist.
You're going way too far ahead.
Within the non-God world, you cannot refer to the sun and say, see, this magical thing couldn't be without God. The same for knowledge. Knowledge just exists. It doesn't need a God to become into existence.
Okay, and how did you determine that the sun is external to your mind?
Do I need to determine that?
Oh, so you're saying you could just be in a grand delusion, and all of this could just be happening in your
I'm
mind?
just saying that I don't need to determine that when I get born into the world. Like, does anyone?
Wait, how do you know that you were born into the world?
I'm trying to make a point here. No one gets born into the world and asks, "Oh, I see this sun. Is it outside of my mind? I need to somehow justify that." No one is doing that. So your
The
question is already
philosophers are.
absurd. It assumes that in order for us to know that the sun is outside of our mind, we somehow need to justify it. No one does that.
That's what philosophers do, bro. That's what epistemology is. The epistemology is like, should we just grant knowledge? Should we just grant all these presuppositions? Should we just grant the circular reasoning of I looked outside and there the sun is, so therefore the sun is outside? Are we allowed to just grant circular logic or not, dude?
My answer to that would be no, we are not supposed to allow circular logic. And what would be circular logic in this case is I want God to exist. So I'm just going to assert that for the sun to exist, God also has to exist.
No, sir, that's not circular. See, but you do agree, you use circular logic, right? That you looked externally, looked at the sun, and you said, look, the sun is external to me, therefore the sun is external to me. Like, you use that, right? You agree?
I never said anything about the sun being external to my mind, so to me it's a complete red herring. We were talking about if knowledge requires God.
And I asked you, how do you know that it's not internal?
I'm asking a question. Why did you run away from the point of, do we need knowledge? Do we need God for knowledge? Now we're talking about the externality of the sun to my mind. This has nothing to do with the original.
Yes, it does. Because if you're just deluded and having a delusion, then what are you talking about? You have no justification except I see it, therefore it exists outside of my mind. That's circular.
I don't think you can just do that. I don't think you can just run away from the original topic
to epistemology,
and say, well, see, you couldn't answer, therefore I win. No, you cannot run away. If you cannot win on the original topic, then I win.
The original topic is you just explained how in the not God world you have to use circular reasoning to make sense of things.
I didn't say anything about circular reasoning. That's
yes,
your
you did,
assertion
dude.
into it.
This is getting up purely dishonest at this point.
I am not being dishonest with this gentleman. This gentleman just told me that he sees the sun, therefore he doesn't need to believe that God exists to know that the sun is there. And then I asked him, is the sun
about the sun? I'm sorry, I'm interrupting, but you lied. You lied right
you
there.
Gave a case about the sun.
My argument for God not being. Oh yeah, that's true. I did bring it up. So let me actually find a way to justify that. Is God in your God view world outside of your mind?
I'm trying to get to the bottom of the not God world and how we know the sun is there. How are we obtaining knowledge in this not God world? Please, we're not doing the critique on it. See, this is what's happening. When I critique, no, dude, you interrupted me again. When I critique your worldview, all you want to do is try to come back and critique mine. But right now, we're just doing. We set up the true dichotomy. Sure. And first, we're going to go through the not God world, and then we can go further through the God world.
Yes,
okay?
Exactly. So let's start with how do we know knowledge in that? Let's not talk about the externality of the sun to my mind. That's not the case yet. Let's just talk about, can we know that the sun exists without God?
And let's say where?
Yeah.
Where anywhere. Does it exist?
Somewhere. It exists somewhere, right?
It exists somewhere. Okay. You want to be more vague or what?
I just need to know the sun exists. I don't need to define where it exists yet.
Okay, the sun
we're
exists.
not yet defining. We're not defining yet if it exists outside of my mind or inside of my mind. It
Okay,
can
the
be
sun
either,
exists. I
but
agree.
the sun exists, and I can know that.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. And how do you know that?
Yes,
Wait, no, I want to know, how do you know the sun exists?
through my mind.
Okay, so through your mind, you
Now,
know the sun exists. Okay.
yes. Do you know this, by the way, that my argument is quite strong here, because I'm currently applying these to all possible ways for the sun to exist, because you brought up whether it exists in my mind or outside of my mind. I
Does
know
it
that the
exist in
sun
everyone's
exists.
mind then?
Hold on, I'm making a point here. I know that the sun exists whether or not it exists in my mind or not. So by my mind, if it exists outside in the real world, I know by my mind that it exists. If it exists only in my mind, again, by my mind, I know that it exists.
Okay,
So
so
my
you
answer to
are
your
the
ultimate question, how do we know things? My answer, through our mind. I know things through my mind. That applies no matter where the sun is. So now your
Okay.
question of whether the sun is external to my mind or not has no validity
No,
in
this,
our larger conversation about how do we know things.
okay,
So
beautiful.
you now have no
Okay,
grounds to
dude,
ask
you're
that
going
question anymore.
forever. Okay, no, it's beautiful what you just said, because what you're saying is in order to acquire knowledge, there must be a mind that exists, right?
Yes, and it
So
only
now,
I
hold
don't
on,
need
dude. I just let
Yeah,
you go for
sure.
5 minutes, bro. Just relax
Yeah,
for a
go ahead.
second. So all knowledge is mind dependent. Is it dependent
Sure.
on your mind or your father's mind or their father's mind or their father's mind, or is there somehow an ultimate mind that is holding all intelligibility somewhere
Okay,
in
that
or
is
outside the
a good
universe?
question.
I don't care.
That is a good question. Now let's apply your logic to these other minds. Can you know that another mind except your own exists stronger than you know that your own mind exists?
No.
I rest my fucking case. Your proof for your own mind existing is stronger than your proof for God existing. So you cannot say that the source of knowledge rests on God, because that's a weaker source of knowledge. You know better that your own mind exists.
I told
So
you
that
it's an
has to be the primary source for knowledge.
In the beginning, I told you it's an indirect evidence, and then you went to direct evidence as if that was like a big slam dunk. That's not a slam dunk, my friend.
I
I
don't
already
care
told you
whether
this
it's
is an
indirect or
indirect
direct.
evidence
Evidence is
using a
fucking
logical
evidence, man.
syllogism. Dude, why are you talking through me? I normally interrupt a lot, and I get that, but I have not been interrupting you, dude. I have not been interrupting you. I let you get your whole piece out. So please, dude. So this is the indirect evidence, because if I know my mind exists, right? And then knowledge is dependent upon my mind. Well, I know that my grandfather had knowledge before my mind existed. Therefore, did all the knowledge exist in his mind? No. So what I do is I just take this all the way back to something that's ultimate and non-contingent for knowledge to be possible in the first place.
That's a good argument, but let me see if you can actually justify it, because you refer to your grandfather's mind and what existed in your grandfather's mind in that argument. Now, in order to actually make your argument, you have to justify that this mind called your grandfather's mind exists outside of your own mind. So again, you are running against the whole problem that you brought up before. Can you justify that anything exists outside of your own mind? You tried to bring it up against me, that I should justify that the sun exists outside of my mind. Now you need to justify your grandfather's mind actually existing.
Okay,
outside
from
of
my
yours.
worldview. Okay, so we'll step into the God worldview, since it is you're asking from my worldview. Yeah, no problem. God has revealed this information to his people that men are without excuse that the external world exists outside of their mind. And the reason we know that is because of the way the external world acts. It acts in a way sometimes that is unpredictable, but for the most part, it acts in a uniform way. Now, I know for a fact I'm not the one holding the uniformity together in my mind, because my mind isn't exactly perfectly logical. I can lie to myself. I can tell myself illogical things and come to false truths. So therefore, there must be this God that revealed all this information to us, and we can trust our senses to a certain extent that the external world exists outside of our mind because God said so.
Thank you for the response. I think you misunderstood my question. My question wasn't inside of your worldview. My question was philosophically within this conversation. Can you justify? Because if you want to refer to your worldview, and for me to accept that, I would have to accept your whole worldview. But we haven't justified your worldview as being true. So we cannot start from that baseline. We are only starting from the baseline of, can you logically prove an outside mind exists, period. Not within your worldview, because I'm not going to accept that. You need to prove all of your worldview for me to accept it. So you need to justify that your grandfather's mind existed outside of your worldview that says that the Bible is true or whatever. Because that's how logical conversation works.
Yeah, without
that's
God,
how philosophical conversation works.
I understand that, and without invoking God, there is no justification that I could give you for that, and that's why that position is reduced to absurdity at this point. So there is no evidence to the contrary of what I said. Okay, that's the only way that makes knowledge possible so far as we know. Unless you have a better answer for us. And you did say knowledge is mind dependent, and you agree knowledge existed before your mind. So you put, you're just going to, okay, so knowledge didn't exist before your mind.
I didn't say that either, by the way. I'm just correcting you on what you asserted me as having said. Now,
I thought you were being honest, so I was just going with
yes,
the honest response would be true, that you would believe that knowledge existed before your mind existed. That would just be
if you just want to assert that because in a philosophical conversation, it should be the case that you are finding out some truths as you speak. So you cannot just ascribe positions that I haven't taken yet to me.
So you are telling me
I need to actually take those stances before you say that this is what you think. You cannot
this is just
think for me. I need to think for myself.
I'm assuming you're an honest. I'm assuming you're an honest interlocutor. Okay, are you saying I shouldn't make that assumption?
I'm saying I am going to use my brain to think for myself. I'm not going to use your brain to think for me.
Dude, the honest position of any person in this room is that knowledge existed before their mind. It doesn't have to be you. Anyone would hold that position. It's the honest position.
We are talking about philosophy. We're not talking about real world application or practical. How do we practically act? We are talking philosophy here. And we are trying to justify from a philosophical standpoint. And by the way, I already
God is a philosophical standpoint, dude. What are you talking about?
I'm talking about this conversation and what we are starting from. We are starting from basically nothing. And then you want to bring your God in, and then you want to say that.
No, we're starting with the dichotomy. We're starting with the dichotomy of the God world and the not God world. And then the question is, what makes knowledge possible? Okay? And both of those worldviews would have to have answers, right? And you're in the not God world so far is showing incoherency because you can't even admit at this point if knowledge existed before your mind. You're nervous.
I'm not nervous in any way. You don't, and you don't. I love the fact that you try to make personal attacks like that because it shows that you're losing. When you have to attack the other side by ascribing nervousness to them, that shows that you have a weak position.
Okay, and
let me actually make a point.
Someone is losing, you're losing. What the heck,
you're
bro?
You're triggered now. Let me
I'm not triggered, bro. We can have the conversation.
Okay,
just
you're both interrupting each other,
you.
guys. You're both interrupting. Let's go one at a time. Laurie, can you clarify something for me?
Sure.
So, are you asking him to validate that you exist outside of his mind? So it means that you are not sure that you are an NPC in his mind?
We're talking about philosophy here. We're not talking about my personal beliefs.
I understand, but are you telling him that he have to validate that you are not an NPC inside your mind, inside his mind? So you're not sure if you are an NPC inside his mind.
I don't think I'm asking that question yet.
You ask him for his grandfather. It's the same thing. Does his grandfather exist outside his mind? So you're asking him to validate that me, you, SE, and the others we are not NPCs inside his mind.
Yeah, actually, yes. Yeah.
So it means that you are not sure if you are an NPC inside.
He's
I might
basically
be sure
saying
that
I
I'm
do
not
not
an
exist.
NPC, but I need to find if he can justify that in his own worldview.
So
can you I'm justifying it? I'm responsible for whether I can justify it in my own worldview, but he is responsible if he can justify it in his.
I did. I gave you my justification in my worldview, and now we're talking in your worldview, which is the not God worldview. So go ahead and prove how you know that I exist outside of your mind.
I don't need to know if you exist. I just need to know if knowledge is contingent on God existing.
And how do you know that?
By my mind being primary to God's, because I can know that my mind exists far better than I can know that God exists.
Yes, I understand that. I understand what you're saying. But do you agree that knowledge existed before your mind?
I do not know if knowledge existed before my mind.
Okay, no problem. This is why I say I've reduced your position to absurdity, because at this point...
Why is it absurd, though? If you want to assert that it's absurd, you need to justify that it is absurd.
You could say you don't know, but you could also say I'm highly confident in the fact that there probably was knowledge before my mind. That would have been the more
why is that absurd, though? Why is it absurd to say that?
So because just say I don't know if knowledge existed before my mind is basically saying that you're not sure if any of us even exist.
I'm just saying, can we philosophically justify that? Now, I want to actually dig. Can you actually justify why it's unreasonable to say that, and why it's absurd? Because if you cannot justify why it's absurd, then it's absurd is just an appeal to emotions, and it's invalid.
Hold on. Let me respond, Torah. Do you know what an axiom is?
Sure.
Well, can you define an axiom?
It's basically...
It's all right if you don't know, dude.
Even.
We're trying to learn
Sorry?
here. We're all here together to learn. So if it's all right if you don't know, you can look it up.
If you want to learn, it helps when I give the answer for you to not speak over me and instead listen.
Go ahead.
Maybe you could learn that. Because I did answer the question and you spoke over me.
Sorry, go ahead.
An axiom is basically what you take as given before you start thinking.
Yeah, it's pretty close, but do you know why that is?
Can you tell me?
Because you don't have a contrary. There's no evidence to the contrary. So I have here right here. I have it pulled up. I'll give you it. An axiom is a statement or principle. And there's many principles in science, including in geometry and in mathematics, that is generally accepted as true, often serving as a foundation for further reasoning or arguments. It's a fundamental truth that is taken as given without proof or further justification. So when you're asking Torah for justification of a fundamental axiom of knowledge and logic, right? You have to understand that the way axioms work, it's to the contrary. There's no evidence to the contrary. And so axioms, I'll give you some examples. So axioms are commonly used in mathematics, logic, and philosophy to establish the basis for deductive reasoning. It's the foundation for all reasoning, actually. Without it, you wouldn't be able to acquire anything.
Yeah, you can't
I'm not
know.
exactly,
That's the tag. That's part of the tag
I'm
and the
not sure
precept.
exactly that it's true that there is no evidence to the contrary. Well, kind of, but it gets more deep than that, because sometimes you take some axioms as truths so that you can get started, but in other contexts you may start with, let's actually question those axioms. So it's not like
Axioms
there
are
are some God-given
unquestionable.
axioms that we always take as true and never question.
Yeah,
It
1
depends
plus
on
1
the
equals 2.
circumstance what you take as axiomatic and what you don't.
Yeah, 1 plus 1 equals 2. Go ahead, debunk it.
I don't need to debunk it. Why are you talking over me and bringing a stupid point that I don't need to debunk?
It's all right, dude. But when you're asking Torah for justification of an axiom, you have to understand that is a stupid, unreasonable request.
Axioms are there for us to question, because sometimes if I want to, for example, go and make some coffee, it's axiomatic for me to take it as granted that I know where the coffee machine exists. But then in some contexts, I may have to question that axiom. For example, if the coffee machine, I cannot find it, maybe then that axiom gets broken. And philosophically speaking, practically, yes, in everyday life, do I take knowledge as something that exists, and do I take outside minds as something as exists? Yes. But in other in other circumstances, it might be helpful to break down that axiom and see, can I actually justify that? Because otherwise, if we don't question axioms, then we might rely on bullshit and take that as axiomatic. And you're basically now saying, let's not question axioms ever. Let's just take them for granted, even though they may be bullshit.
No, for example, the laws of... Hold on real quick. Let me give him... Hold on. Yeah, so for example, like there's nothing wrong with questioning axioms at all. The scriptures tell us test all things, right?
Hold on.
But right now, like for example, the 3 laws of logic, right? Those are axioms. Unless you can break one of them, please go ahead. Try to break them. Try to break the law of non-contradiction or law of excluded middle. Go ahead.
I find it interesting that you right now said that there is nothing wrong with questioning axioms. But before you were literally asking me, why am I asking Torah to justify something axiomatic? So right then you were saying that there's something wrong with questioning.
No, you're missing the point. It's okay to question it, but you got to give the rebuttal. You got to rebut it. You can't just question it for no reason. That's a gigantic... Okay, then that's a gigantic leap of faith. A faith that is so strong that I don't have. I don't have that kind of faith. So I don't know why you have that kind of faith, because you have no evidence to reject a claim based on the contrary. So there is no evidence, but you still reject a claim. It's ridiculous leap of faith.
I don't need evidence to ask a question. What are you talking about? I was asking a question and now you are saying I have some faith. No, I was just asking a question. That doesn't require any faith from me.
Okay, that's fine. So what you're doing is you're operating from a worldview as if God exists without admitting it. Just like you're like, because we don't want to define what it is or what. So it's just like the fact of pi. Like pi is axiomatic, right? 3.1415. It's just an axiomatic truth about circles. But you're saying, I'm going to accept that pi is true, is the case. But I'm not going to actually give any justification for why I believe. I'm not going to accept that pi is ultimately the case. You know, it's not, I'll live my life as if it is the case, but I'm not going to accept it ultimately as it is the case.
I don't think you are correct there, mister, because me accepting knowledge as existing is not in any case comparable to that. Because already, again, you are asserting and defining by your axiom that God exists. And now you're saying, oh no, if you ever admit that knowledge might exist, you have to buy my axiomatic claim that God is the basis for it. And I'm just asking, can you prove that God is the basis for that, other than saying that Scripture says so?
No,
I
can you
haven't seen you
define
do that.
God?
I haven't
Can
seen you
okay,
justify
I know
that.
that. I know I have done that in the past. Can you define God for me so I understand your point?
God is basically like an ultimate bigger being.
Ultimate bigger being?
Yeah.
So is it possible that there's an ultimate bigger being than yourself?
Is it possible? Yeah, anything's possible. But I'm
Okay, and
asking,
now,
you need to
with that,
justify that it actually is factually 100% the case. We're not talking about
I
is
can't do
it
that.
like
I can't prove
magically
any.
possible in
I
some
can't.
fancy
You're
universe.
asking for the impossible. I
Yeah,
cannot prove anything with 100% certainty. You already
Okay,
know
then I
this.
rest my
But
case.
hold
You
on, let
don't
me give
have
you an example. Hold
justification
on.
for God then.
Let me give
Okay,
you an
then we
example.
can't
Like,
know anything unless you prove it with 100% certainty. So you don't know anything.
Thank you. Neither do you.
can you debunk the law of identity, which is
I don't
axiomatic?
know if I need to do that.
It's one of the main principles of logic, dude. So I know you guys keep saying the possibility that we're all one mind. How do I know that really I'm not a figment of your imagination, or you're not a figment of my imagination, and you're really just a construct, right? That we're all one. We're all just a big brain, and this is all simulation. For that to be
It's
true,
possible.
for that possibility to be true, it would violate the law of identity.
It wouldn't
No, it
violate
wouldn't.
the law of identity, because then the identity would be my mind. So the law of identity says that A equals A. And then in that case, the equation would go like this. My mind equals my mind.
Yeah, but it
Or
would
perhaps we're
devolve into
talking about
absurdity
your mind.
because then you could be me and I could be you, and really we're all the same being. We're all the same entity. You wouldn't know where to distinguish an entity from another entity. That would violate the law of logic. Because
It doesn't violate the law of logic. Maybe I can use an example here.
In the law of identity, you distinguish you from the person next to you, bro. And then right now in the solipsistic mind, you can't tell if the person next to you is real or not.
That's
you don't
not
know.
what
It
the
could
law
be
of
you. It could be a
identity
part
means.
of your own mind. The person next to you could be a part of your own mind.
Let me use an example to demonstrate why that's a mischaracterization of the law of identity. Let's say I go to sleep and I see a dream, and there is a ball in my dream. I can then say that the ball is a part of my dream. Does that break the law of identity? Because the ball in my dream is a different thing from the tree in my dream, but they are both part of the dream.
Fair enough.
So now the law of identity is broken, because the equation is the ball equals my dream, and no longer A is no longer equal A. It's exactly the same argument that you were making. So you would have to agree
hold
that
on, dude.
dreams breaks the law of identity.
Right. But within reason, right, in your dream, you could be talking to your mother, right? Your dead mother or whatever. And then your dead mother starts to transition to your dead sister, for example, right? I know it's kind of morbid, but so just because in your dream your mother became your sister, right? It doesn't necessarily violate the law of identity. And even though it's within your mind, doesn't mean that now you can superimpose your mind to all of reality and act like all of reality is part of your mind. You see the difference there? You're making an illusory correlation. Just because things in your mind sometimes can change from, or from another, doesn't mean that that's going to happen in reality necessarily. I'm
not saying that things in reality, for my argument to stand, things in reality don't need to change into each other. So let's argue the case that everything actually exists in my mind. Does the law of identity actually get broken? Because then the equation would go like this: my mind equals my mind. Your mind inside of my mind equals your mind inside of my mind. My mother inside of my mind equals my mother inside of my mind. The ball inside of my mind equals the ball inside of my mind. At no stage whatsoever we can take an infinite amount of objects within my mind. They all are themselves. So the law of identity doesn't get broken in the metal level of my mind, nor in the submetal level of all the objects within my mind.
Listen. Bro, I'll give you that. All right, you got me. All right, go ahead, Torah.
He violated the law of non-contradiction there. Because are those things
Why?
outside of your mind or not?
Doesn't mean that now you can superimpose your mind to all of reality and act like all of reality is part of your mind. You see the difference there? You're making an illusory correlation. Just because things in your mind sometimes can change from, or for another, doesn't mean that that's going to happen in reality necessarily.
I'm
follow
not
me,
saying
dude?
that things in reality, for my argument to stand, things in reality don't need to change into each other. So let's argue the case that everything actually exists in my mind. Does the law of identity actually get broken? Because then the equation would go like this: my mind equals my mind. Your mind inside of my mind equals your mind inside of my mind. My mother inside of my mind equals my mother inside of my mind. The ball inside of my mind equals the ball inside of my mind. At no stage whatsoever we can take an infinite amount of objects within my mind. They all are themselves. So the law of identity doesn't get broken in the metal level of my heart, nor in the sub-metal level of all the objects within my mind.
Listen. Bro, I'll give you that, all right? You got me. All right? Go ahead, Torah.
He violated the law of non-contradiction there. Because are those things outside of your mind or not?
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
Are those things outside of your mind, or your claim is they're all in your mind, so then all those things are just your mind? That would just be an illusion.
Yeah, it would be an illusion. How does it break any law?
Illusions are illogical. Don't you agree?
I don't think they are illogical. No. They don't have to be.
They don't have to be illogical? Okay. I can understand what you're saying. So you're saying, like, can you just repeat to me exactly? Because in your mind, my mind exists in your mind, but my mind is not your mind? How is that possible if your mind manifested my mind?
I didn't say my mind is not your mind. Your mind would be part of my mind.
Okay, so then everything is in your mind.
Yes, that's kind of the definition. But something being, look here, I think here's the critical problem. You think that something being a part of my mind breaks the law of non-contradiction or whatever. It doesn't.
No, I thought I heard you. I thought I heard something different. So I'll recant that. I don't think you broke the law of non-contradiction. Yeah, I think I just misheard what you were saying.
Okay.
Now I'm looking for the distinction. I'm looking for the distinction of how you how did you distinguish that my mind is inside of your mind, but it is not your mind?
Basically, it's part of my mind. So I guess that would kind of mean, but it's part of it, not whole. It's kind of the same thing as saying I have a chair here, and the chair has a foot on it, like the part that the chair stands on. The foot is part of the chair, but it's not the whole chair. And just saying that the foot is part of the chair, that doesn't break any law.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. But now, so then, is there an ultimate mind that has your mind and my mind? Right, that because like the chair example, right, is your foot sitting on the chair, the chair sitting on the floor, the foundation of the floor is sitting on the earth is sitting on space-time, and then, I mean, it just goes back. Like, do you end up in infinite regression, or do you have an ultimate source, or are you just okay with the infinite regression?
Couldn't it just be that I am the ultimate source? If we need an ultimate source, I am that.
Okay, and then can you prove things? Hold on, can you prove? If you are, can you prove things with 100% certainty?
I'm not sure if I need to for me to be the ultimate.
Okay, well then you can't be the ultimate source.
Why couldn't I be? Because even if I am not a perfect mind, I can still be the ultimate mind. Because if you exist outside of, if you exist inside of my mind, then you would be a sub-mind. So even if I don't know things perfectly, you know even less than that. So I would be an ultimate mind, even though not perfect.
Okay, that's fine. I'm done at this point. You are the ultimate mind. You are the arbiter of truth. You are the God. I got it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you live in the God world. You just attribute it to being you. It's still
Yeah, I think that would work well for me.
it's still not the not God world. So you also believe in God. It's just you.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, so then why are you arguing with me when I try to bring up that God exists?
Because you refer to the Bible as being the ultimate source, and I didn't write the Bible. We have now defined that I am the ultimate mind, so you cannot refer to the Bible as the.
I didn't write it either, man. I didn't write it. I just read it, and I'm sorry that you get upset with what it says.
You need for me to write it for you to refer to it.
Yeah. Okay. You got any writings? You write anything? And especially something that claims to hold truth with 100% certainty.
Yeah, let me see actually the
I
last.
thought you said
thing
you
that I
can't
wrote.
have any 100% certain claims. So, but now you can write a book that does claim 100% certainty. Uh-oh, contradiction alert.
I answered your question whether I wrote something. I didn't answer your question whether I wrote something in 100% certainty.
Wait, how do you know that? How do you know you wrote something? Couldn't that just be in your mind?
Yeah. But I mean, if I write inside of my mind, that's
Yeah,
kind
you
of
just so you
better.
don't know. Yeah, so you don't know.
For certain, I know better that I wrote something than I know that you wrote. Because I had the experience of writing something, but I didn't have any experience of you writing it.
Hold on, go to the text chat right now. I'll show you. Okay, it's gonna say for Yah is typing. Did you know that I was writing?
I knew that a text message is telling me that you're writing. That's not the same kind of knowing that I'm writing, because when I type on my keyboard, I have the personal experience of producing letters. I don't have that kind of experience. I cannot experience and know. I cannot know your hands on the keyboard the way I know my hands on the keyboard. So in every way, my knowing of my mind existing and my existence existing is superior to me knowing
Okay,
that you
but
exist.
Yeah, but the evidence is clear now, though, right? Because the text came through, right? And you didn't know what I was going to write, but you knew I was writing something. And then I wrote something that you had no idea. And then there was evidence for it because I hit send and my message came through, right?
Yeah, it just could be that my mind wrote the message Torah for Yah is typing, and then my mind also typed test I am writing. It spontaneously came up with it at the moment when you hit enter.
Okay, no worries, brother. Let's get a topic going. Let's get a good one.
Was that one over?
I think it is. I mean, we have God in the chat, though, so if you guys want to know anything, just ask him. Hey, Lori, does it bother you that God makes rules that suppress you from doing, like, bad behavior? The God of the Bible, I should say. I think it's just too hard for some men to see, like, cleavage and not lust after that woman. And so they have an issue with God now or something. I don't know what's going on.
What are you talking about?
Seeing cleavage doesn't make me think about God.
What? No, no. Obviously, that's the problem, right? That's what I'm saying. Like when you see cleavage, you get all excited and you follow fleshly desires rather than just seeing that that's someone's daughter.
You're still operating from a God world, though.
Yeah, and I know my question was, is the reason that you're denying the existence of the God of the Bible because you have behavioral tendencies that go against the behavior he requires?
No, that's dumb.
Okay, so then what is your issue? What do you take issue with?
Just hasn't been demonstrated.
Well, if nothing can be proven with 100% certainty, what are you looking for?
That's not what I'm asking for. Not 100% certainty.
Okay, then
Not
what
a
makes
reasonable doubt,
knowledge
perhaps.
possible? What makes knowledge possible in the not God world?
Minds, human minds.
So before human minds, there was no knowledge.
Correct.
Even if there was a bird, but there was no human mind. There was no knowledge in that bird's head of how to feed its babies and all its instinctual manners.
I don't know if that would be considered knowledge, but I could allow for the possibility that that would be knowledge, yeah. So maybe not human minds, but minds in general.
Okay, so, and you agree knowledge is mind dependent?
Yeah.
Okay, and then, so before human minds or animal minds, then there was just the earth. Was there any knowledge to be had?
No.
So it operated in an illogical manner.
No, it's still operated.
What
according to the
is
laws of
it?
physics.
The universe,
The universe,
the
I
earth.
presume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just in a universe acted as it did, and there was no one to know anything about it.
But it acted in by the laws of physics and the laws of logic, which are mind dependent.
No, we humans
No.
lay that on it. And, you know, things
So the laws
things
of
happen
physics.
without us. Things don't need us to interpret it. Stuff happens anyway.
I agree, but it needs an ultimate mind, right?
No.
Otherwise,
No.
it wouldn't be intelligible.
Nope.
It needs to be intelligible.
Okay, do you have an example of this somewhere?
No.
Cloud formation.
Cloud formation doesn't require a mind. How do you know
That's
that?
right.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
you're saying we know 100% certain how the clouds are being formed, and we've given a descriptor to it.
Oh,
And
that's
therefore,
I don't
different.
need 100%
Yeah.
certainty of any of this.
Yeah.
well, I'm just asking, how do you know it's
Moving
not
the
the mind
goalpost.
of God? How do you know it's not the mind of God controlling that scenario?
I don't see
it's
any
not been
reason for me to
demonstrated
think
that it
that.
Okay, can you see your mind?
No.
Okay, then why would you expect to see God's mind somewhere?
I'm not saying to see God's mind, but to see evidence of it.
Yeah, the evidence is the knowledge existing.
No, it's not. How does that
Okay, then
follow?
what? Okay, yeah, because you just claim knowledge didn't exist before any minds got here. Therefore, things didn't have to operate in a logical fashion. So there's no mind,
That
right?
doesn't mean it didn't have to operate in a logical fashion. It just means nothing was known.
Okay, then
I don't know
how do the
getting
laws of
from
logic?
A
How
to
do
B.
where do the laws of logic exist?
The conformity of the universe allowed us to derive the laws of logic from its operation, from the universe's operation.
So they exist in the universe, is what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Oh my goodness. What are you saying then? The universe operates in a logical manner because the universe is a sentient being that is logical or something?
I don't
It's
know,
actually the
man.
opposite. The universe operates in its logical manner because that's just how the universe operates.
You have an example of anything without a mind acting logically?
The universe.
And why are you attributing that there's no mind to the universe? How do you know that?
Because there doesn't seem to be a need for one.
But everything else does need one.
No, not everything else.
This is just the one thing. Okay, so you have an example of something besides the universe that has the laws of logic without a mind?
That has the laws of logic without a mind? No. But it wouldn't have to be anything besides
so
the
it's
universe.
just this one thing. It's just this one thing, right? Okay, so just this one thing. So we can special plead. Yeah, we're special pleading for the universe to have these very special properties of knowledge and intelligence, laws of logic, uniformity, all of it, which requires a mind from all the experience I've ever had on Earth, and you agree, all of those things require a mind from all the experience you have, but the universe, for some reason, is the only thing that doesn't.
That you've just said.
Okay, are you sure about that?
You're speaking in an illogical manner.
If I may, I find this argument kind of interesting because, for example, I think you have experienced doors. Do you, in your experience of doors, do you assert that a door needs a mind for it to be logical? Because if you're not saying that,
doors are logical. Is that what you're saying?
Oh my God! Just answer the question
they seem to be.
Another question.
It didn't really compute to me. He asked me if doors are logical.
My question isn't, are doors logical? That was your question. My question is, you're saying that you have no experience of anything else in the world, maybe apart from the universe, which we cannot grant. You don't have experience of anything else in the world that's logical, that doesn't have a mind. So, two questions. A, is a door logical? And B, does a door have a mind? That's my question to you.
A door cannot be opened and closed at the same time. I mean, unless it's like a screen door, I guess. But no. So a door cannot be opened or closed at the same time. But it would be the creator of the door that was logical. Yeah, when he put it together.
Okay, but then the door itself doesn't have a mind. So you do have experience of something logical existing that doesn't require a mind of its own.
That's like you're in a whole category error here. Are you saying a door is likened? Are you saying the door? No, but is the door likened to the universe? Then is that what you're saying?
I'm actually making the point because I noticed that you are kind of making a category error of yourself. You are deliberately asking the question about the universe, so that anything that might actually fit into your examples of things that do not need a mind to be logical, you can just say, but see, that's within the universe. But that's kind of a logical, you're doing a tricky thing, like you're playing a game there. Because you know for real that we can list an infinite amount of things within the universe that do not need minds to exist. So you're asking the initial question already is the game, where you can then say that, oh no, it's only one thing. You defined it as one thing.
I get it. You're mad at me.
By playing them all together, but you have an infinite amount of things, not only one, that don't need a mind to be logical.
Okay, please. Okay, the operation of the door is logical, but what about the door itself makes it logical, please?
That's for you to... It's my question to you.
So I don't grant No, it's not. Not on its own, no.
Okay, got it. Okay, doors are illogical.
Yeah, unless you can apply logic to... I can apply logic to the operation of the door, but the door itself, I don't think you just point at stuff and go, that's logical. That's not how it works. You don't just point at a street and go, look, streets are logical. What are you talking about?
But streets are logical. They can be trusted. Like I go out every day and I see the street.
That's not a definition of logical.
Yes, it is, because it would be illogical.
Okay, so definition of a thing being logical is that it can be trusted.
Yes. Partly,
where do you get that definition?
I get the definition by being logical. It's fun for me, by the way, that you're interrupting me, because that shows that you're getting triggered. It would be quite illogical if I go outside and there is a door, there is a street in front of my house, but next day I go out, there is nothing there, not a street and nothing else. Then that would be quite illogical. And
Why would that be illogical?
Dreams have that quality. Have you ever had a dream where, for example, you have clothes on now, but then the next moment you don't have any clothes on? Because that's illogical. But these clothes that I have on right now, they are logical. They don't disappear randomly. So yes, one definition, one quality. Not all of the qualities of logicalness, but one quality of logicalness is things behaving in a patterned way.
Yeah, uniformity of nature.
My clothes are here, and I see them, and they don't disappear randomly.
Okay, I'll address both of your points.
Clothes are logical, and the street is logical.
Okay, I'll address both of your points. First of all, you said the street being gone the next day would be illogical. No, they could have torn it up to repave it, so it's not illogical. It's a possibility. And I'm not finished, so who's interrupting who again?
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay, so that's first off wouldn't be illogical. Now you're saying because dreams don't have uniformity of nature, that makes the dreams illogical. It's not really the case, because there's nothing that states that dreams require uniformity of nature. However, what you're stating is that uniformity of nature exists in the world, therefore we can know some things. Do you have a justification for why nature is uniform besides habitual observation?
Thank you for going on so long that I will only address the first part of it. You asserted that my first point about the street existing gets debunked because they might have torn it out. Did you listen to what I said? I said very clearly, if I go out this day, the street exists, I go out the next day, there is nothing there. The street doesn't exist, and in the place of the street, there is nothing. They didn't torn
nothing doesn't exist, so I don't know.
Nothingness. There is nothingness.
Nothing doesn't exist.
Clearly you didn't listen to what I said.
Well, nothing doesn't exist, so that doesn't compute
within my original statement, I already took your criticism into account, and I predicted it, and I anticipated it.
But nothing doesn't exist.
I knew that you were gonna say that it gets thrown out. I already took it into account.
Okay, nothing doesn't exist. Okay, so your hypothetical is illogical. So yeah, I agree with you. That would be illogical. Yeah, for just something to turn into nothing, because that isn't, nothing doesn't exist. So yeah, but can you address the second point? Like you're saying, nature is uniform. We have pattern recognition. We have habitual observations, so we know things. Well, what makes nature uniform? Why is that?
What makes nature uniform?
According to your argument, it should be your mind.
Actually, I don't need to make that case. I can just make this simple case. Why does something need to make nature uniform? Can it not just be uniform? You are already asserting by asking the question that in order for a thing to be thus, there needs to be something that makes it thus. And that's an assertion that you haven't justified yet.
Yeah, I have plenty of examples of it, like watches, clocks. There's tons of stuff that we make that create uniformity, and they are because we made it uniform in that way. So there's no evidence to the contrary that you can just have a bunch of randomness create uniformity.
It's evidence to the contrary in the sense that we can point to plenty of things that we didn't create that also have uniformity. So you cannot assert based on the subcategory of things that we did that have uniformity, that everything else also then needs a creator to have uniformity. You are trying to broaden from the subcategory to the whole without any basis.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I'm just looking for evidence of the contrary. So like when you say there are things that we didn't make that are uniform, you're just, in my worldview, pointing to the creation, which has a creator.
I don't think that's again based on your assertion. So it's again circular logic. Your assertion is whenever you point out to a counterexample of things that have no creator, I will go to my original argument that oh no, they required a creator. Well, I think I can play that game too. So let's say you refer to this table. The table was created, and then you refer to the ground. The ground was also created because everything requires a creator. Well, I can then just play the same game, and I can say, see, but in my worldview, the ground doesn't require a creator, so your example doesn't work. You cannot refer to the ground as a category of things that we didn't create that need a creator, because in my worldview, they don't.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. That's not a problem. Foundations definitely were created by a man. No doubt. But the bottom line is, so then if there is no creation needed, I can grant that point, that there doesn't have to be a cause to an effect. So then and then things can't be circular. So you're saying axioms have to be justified. So why does 1 + 1 = 2?
Oh my God.
I think I need to justify why 1 + 1 = 2. For you to ask the question, you need to justify why it's on me to even justify that.
I'm just demonstrating that you don't have to justify it. It's axiomatic, and I'm putting forward the God world is axiomatic. And you agreed with me earlier because you said you were God, and you can't think of it in another way in the not God world of anything existing.
I can think of it in plenty of other ways.
You will attribute anything. You will attribute the position of what God is, like the ultimate higher being was your example, to something. In it either being your mind or a picture on the wall, whatever you want to do it, but you will attribute that to something.
I don't think you are correct. You already went off the rails when you said that I cannot do anything else. The only way the conversation plays is I justify it by it being my mind. That was the one particular conversation that we had. I can play this conversation many times. We're just playing a game here. And the game can end in several ways, but in every single case, I win. That's the only thing that doesn't change.
Yeah, if you felt like you win after being backed into multiple corners and then going into other corners to deflect and then contradicting, hold on, and then contradicting your previous positions, if you call that a win, then I mean, I don't know if you're operating in a logical worldview.
Well, this is a new game, so this is a new match. So if my positions currently contradict my previous positions, that's the same as saying, see, this move wouldn't work in the previous chess game, so you cannot play this chess game like that. No, every single match is independent of each other, so we're gonna play a new game and we'll see who wins.
Okay, if you're playing games, with your worldview, that's fine, bro. You can play games.
This move doesn't apply to the previous game. That's nonsense.
Except that you obviously don't understand what a worldview is, and if you think it's just like I'll just borrow from this one here in this argument, and then I'll borrow from this one here in this argument, then what you are is a double speaker. You act one way and say another thing. So you're a dishonest person, sir, and you're suppressing the truth and unrighteousness, and it's sad to see.
Thank you for the moral grandstanding there, mister. I am a very reasonable person. I am a nice person to know, probably better person to know than you are. And I am simply trying to test your worldview. You made the assertion that I don't know what a worldview is. You cannot say that just because I'm testing your worldview. If I didn't know what a worldview is, how could I even try to begin testing yours?
Maybe this is the right time for a topic change. I'm just saying. I'm just bringing it up.
I'd love for a topic change.